heritage, of course, is a very, very important area, and what defines us, who we are. It's an identity for us. And in a way, if you look at it, what better a location to have this conversation where Purana Killa is on one side, Yamuna Bank's on the other side, and other celebrated architects like Mr. Charles Correa, Mr. Kanvinde, their creations just across the street, Lutyens Delhi just at the back. So very, very culturally rich context which exists in this area. Of course, the way the development is happening, very many places you see that there is not as much regard which is paid to the heritage that we carry, and most likely there is always a very disorganized kind of a development that happens across it, which sort of dilutes the heritage buildings which are in there, or otherwise the historical context of the city is not taken into account when you are planning for newer development. So in this context, while several smart cities are underway, and hopefully will continue to grow, prosper, and newer cities will come through, the context of heritage becomes very, very important. So in that light, I would like to ask Naveen, the first question is that what and how do you define smart heritage? What do you mean by smart heritage? That's a word that I believe has been discussed, deliberated quite a few many times, and INTAC has played a very significant role in this area. So would you want to explain to our audience as to what exactly means smart heritage?
Well, yes.
You'll have to keep the mic closer to you.
Yeah, I think it is on. It is on. Hello? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much for inviting me to this, interaction, and thanks for putting this question right at the outset. This whole idea of smart heritage is driven and conceptualized by INTAC. INTAC, as some of us know, is the Indian National Trust for Art and Cultural Heritage. So, it is the largest membership-based non-government organization in India, set up in 1984, and looking at the documentation, the listing, the identification of heritage all across the country. Now, when this mission, when this mega ideation by the government of India called Smart City came up in India, and it kind of looked at bringing in new ideas, very revolutionary, very innovative, very futuristic approach to looking at cities' growth, both physically, infrastructure wise, economically, socially, etc., etc. One was wondering that, particularly in an Indian context, specifically, and this is where we differ from the let's say the Western world, is almost every Indian city has a very strong heritage or historical context, starting from Varanasi to Trivandrum to Madurai to even Delhi where we are sitting, Kolkata. You look at any city, Nagpur, which is in the list of smart cities, there is a very special historic core, or let's say that is the nucleus from where the city started growing, evolving several 100,000 years ago. So the idea was, is the smart city mission, DPRs, looking at this historic core in the first place, or are they looking at a blanket site where such constraints or such inspiration is not there, and they can start from a clean slate, so to say, to have the high rises and the undergrounds and the hospitals and the schools and the airports and the rest of it. The initial assessment, and I'm going 2-3 years back, 4 years back, the initial assessment was that a lot of the heritage component was not included in the ideation of smart city, because as the name suggests, it was supposed to be smart. It wasn't supposed to be a ruinous or a shamble or a disintegrating monument around which the development has taken place. So we said, look, if you're going to work on smart city, or if you're going to work on making cities smart, why should heritage be left behind? You see, because that's how the city came into existence in the first place. So if so much of interest and investment is happening in making the city smart, we have to look at the heritage component of that city. We have to look at the historic core of that city, and therefore to find a way into smart city, we coined the term smart heritage. And this term smart heritage was actually coined in Spain, where we had gone for a discussion or a signing of an MOU with a local municipality, because Spain that time was much ahead, and their cities were already becoming smart and their heritage was already becoming smart. So there, in one of the brainstorming sessions, this notion of smart heritage was coined, which then came to India. INTAC started work on it. There is a paper, there are several case studies. We have done workshops with CEOs of smart cities in Bhopal, in Lucknow, in Pune, and several other cities, Dehradun, which are there on the website. So, that is the origin of the notion of smart heritage, to be able to go, if not ahead, but at least in line with smart city concept.
Thank you, Naveen. My related question to this is, while of course you've helped everybody understand what is the genesis or the origin place of this whole term called smart heritage, you've traveled a lot. You teach at York as well, which is, like, if I may, god of conservation, right? During all your travels and your interactions with other cities overseas, right, which have strong heritage as a context, what do you see as the major differentiator between there and here in terms of ideas and implementation? See, there is one thing to talk about ideas, make DPRs, put it on a piece of paper. The other important area is basically implementation of those ideas on ground, which actually make the real difference, right? So what are some of those learnings that you've seen, the differences which are there?
And I think it's a good question. This is quite a provoking, let's say, starting point, where we start by an assumption that there are a lot of differences. And these differences are because they're cities as a whole. So if you look at Rome, London, Edinburgh, Seoul, Daejeon, Paris, Berlin, etc., etc., you don't necessarily differentiate between an iconic heritage site and the city. Like you can very easily differentiate between Red Fort and Purana Kila, or other heritage sites across the country, because these sites are taken care of by a department in the government, which happens to be, these are centrally protected sites. So the Ministry of Culture, or let's say a particular ministry, will look at these sites. There will be another ministry which will be looking at the city's development, the Housing Affairs Ministry. So the differentiation actually starts from there. The monuments and the sites, they start getting differentiated from the planning process, from the developmental process, from the tourism process, because tourism is again a separate wing of the government. So when you have these separate wings of the government, and culture and monuments are sitting under one, then obviously there has to be much more integration and lateral connections to be able to integrate these sites into the larger planning discussion. And therefore, as I said, if you look at the original DPRs 3-4 years back, a lot of emphasis was on new development, the idea of creating something new, without necessarily referring to the existence of the past. So that because different ministries were looking at these different schemes. Now, if you look at Rome, you can travel in your car very close to the Colosseum, which is a Roman site. So it goes back several hundred years, but you can drive past. You can have a house, or you can have a restaurant, you can have your food right next to, let's say, Pantheon, which is again the history goes back several hundred years. But can you have a cup of coffee or tea sitting next to Red Fort or inside the palaces which are there in the Red Fort? No, you can't. So the disintegration in the conceptualization itself starts happening. Where is this regulation of 100 meters you can't do anything, it's a prohibited zone. 200 meters you have to take permission. There is no 100 meters, 200 meters prohibition in Rome or in Paris or in London. You can be right across a historic site and live your life. So it's part of your everyday experience. And that thinking then it goes back into the mindset of decision makers, in the mindset of planners, in the mindset of urban designers, in the mindset of traffic people who are deciding on the traffic. A very easy comparison is in a country like, let's say together, United Kingdom, so England, Scotland, Wales, there are 500,000 or even more protected listed sites. And a country like, in a subcontinent like India, which can cover the whole, there are only 8,000 protected sites, heritage sites, between central government and state government.
Protected or documented?
Protected. Documented maybe even slightly more, and undocumented are in millions.
I would imagine. I mean, India is a big
Undocumented
country,
are in millions.
yeah.
I'm just saying, in a country as huge as India, you have 8,000, and in a country as small as UK, you have 500,000. So that's where the mindset starts. Country like New Zealand, 140,000. So you go outside India and the protected heritage, which is the culture and the pride of that country, reflects in how they look at their heritage. And we look at 8,000. It is only intact that has documented about 50,000 plus sites across the country, but there are millions. And there's a long way to go, a huge long way to go.
So I'm picking up two threads from your conversation right now. One, it seems like somewhere this whole regulatory process that we have of 100-meter, don't go near this zone, seems to be prohibitive in terms of what you can do, and which is also resulting in that these structures are not becoming part of our day-to-day fabric, day-to-day living. So it is not getting unified, and which is where somewhere the divide is coming between an area-based development versus non-area-based development, inclusive and exclusive areas, and somehow in the development of new cities, we are forgetting the genesis or the nucleus, which is our heritage, and developing outside of it rather than making it inclusive and the starting point of our journey.
Absolutely.
Okay, important. Mr. Mattu, I will come to you, sir. You've done a lot of work in the Srinagar area. With this context of heritage that we are talking about, would you want to share your experiences in terms of how some of these structures over there, or other places, public places for that matter, they might be being used to create, or propagate urban development? How is it all working there?
Well, I completely agree with Naveen that we treat heritage both psychologically and at a policy level in a very archaic and unevolved manner. We don't understand that heritage can be a part of your tourism narrative and your day-to-day narrative and your social life.
Starting point of a journey.
Right. So what we do is we have a museum mentality when it comes to heritage. And Srinagar has a lot of heritage sites.
Of course.
By the very nature of the city.
Sure.
The old city itself, what we call as the inner city, the Shahr-e-Khas in Urdu, has a lot of heritage, undocumented heritage, not just unprotected but undocumented heritage.
Well. Okay.
And I know Mr. Salim Beg of Intac, he works really hard, and we've had these interactions often about what to do with heritage. I think the primary, and I'll kind of stick my neck out and say that we don't have clarity on the policy level when it comes to the government. You have the ASI.
Yeah.
And I'll just give you an example. On Shivratri, I went to this temple called the Shankaracharya temple. It's on a hill, overlooks the Srinagar city. I don't know if you've been there. And I went there to meet the devotees. And when we were going inside, obviously, the mayor is followed by the press and everything. So, there was some commotion. I looked back and kind of asked, "Kya ho raha hai?" And these two gentlemen from ASI came and they said there is no photography 50 meters around the monument.
Okay.
Right? So, I actually kind of, after they even sat down with him and I told him, explain this to me. You can have a drone
Yeah.
flying right into the premises. How does that help? So we need to have a more evolved sense of what our heritage is.
Sure.
It's more than brick and mortars, right?
Correct.
It's the physicality of heritage is one aspect of our heritage. The narrative that it should occupy in our day-to-day lives is the more important aspect of heritage. And as you rightly said, in Europe, I mean, you travel around Europe, you can actually walk through the Stonehenge. Right? Imagine the Stonehenge being in our neck of the woods. There would be a barricade around it, and you wouldn't go out. Or the Colosseum, so the first primary challenge is to evolve a very clear, very dedicated, and very isolated from bureaucracy process. When I say isolated from bureaucracy, heritage can't wait for red tape, right? It's a depreciating asset in far too many ways than can be described. It's a depreciating asset. You're from KPMG, so you would probably understand what I mean. So it can't wait for red tape to have its way and wait. Intact does a lot of wonderful work, right? I've been wanting to involve Intact more in Srinagar, and we will in protecting, working on our heritage structures. But on the government end, there needs to be some sort of a unidirectional, single window system to maintain heritage sites, to protect them, to document them. It is not rocket science. It's a very simple process.
Right.
Countries around the world do it, and we should be able to do it. Second, again, I'll go back to the root of it. Heritage is something that you inherit and something that you hand down.
Correct.
Right. So while we have inherited it, we will not be able to hand it down to our children if they can't experience it.
Exactly.
So our tourism narratives, I'll talk about Srinagar again. Srinagar is a tourist city. And our Tulip Festival starts today.
Okay.
So we have a lot of tourists coming into Srinagar. Now, pause for a moment and think about going to a small European city the size of Srinagar. Well, by European standards, Srinagar is a huge city.
Correct.
But from Human Development Index and economic standards, compare it to an average European city, a tourist city. And the moment you land into that city, you will have brochures and leaflets about heritage tours.
Yes.
You're talking about
Europe.
if you travel to Europe. Okay.
Yeah, anywhere.
Yes.
So you land as a tourist. The era of guides is long bygone.
Right at the airport itself, as you
Right,
check in,
so
you
you'll
get
have-
all the information about
Yeah,
the
you'll
city.
have all the information. So if you want to,
And now these days it's all digital as well.
yeah. So if you're a foodie, you want to go and eat. These are the best 10 burgers in town.
Right.
So if you're into heritage, what do you do?
Right.
So while certain cities might have those programs,
Right.
I know for a fact that Srinagar as a tourist city does not.
Does not have.
There is far more to Srinagar than scenic lakes, mountains, hills, tulips, and the Mughal gardens.
Right.
The heritage component of Srinagar as a tourist city has far been overshadowed, probably because there is a lot of scenic beauty.
Yes.
So, that's not what you think your USP is, but I firmly believe that is what Srinagar's USP is. The different eras that we have seen. The first Buddhist conclave, the global Buddhist conclave was held in Srinagar.
Interesting.
And this is probably 2,000-3,000 years ago. The first global Buddhist conclave where monks from, 20 odd countries participated in the conclave was held in Srinagar. We have the best sun temples in the country. And they're in ruination. They're in absolute ruins. And we have documented history elaborate to a level where it might not be comparable to any other city in the country. That's how elaborate our documented history is. And I just told you about this Buddhist conclave. You go to the outskirts of Srinagar, you will see an amphitheater, a stone amphitheater, an auditorium, and amazing, mind-blowing structures built, 2,000 years ago.
So, but where does things have to start changing? I know you touched upon policy. Policy is a large area, sensitive zone as well. But there would be some thoughts. I'm not saying if they would be even crystallized, that would come to you, like very evidently. This is as simple as it should have been changed, which would make this journey even better. Where we are not able to, respect the heritage that we have, make it more inclusive, and like you rightly said, we have inherited this. What is it that we are going to pass it on to the next generation?
Absolutely.
So, what are some of these thoughts that come to your mind that should change?
To start with, we need to understand the economic value of heritage tourism. Like it or not, government policy eventually, especially in developing nations, is driven by economics.
Sure.
In developed nations, economics can be side-shelved for a bit.
But it's strange that this heritage is the one which is bringing me, it's helping boost the economy of my city, as an example. But somehow we are not able to pay as much attention to it, and we are running around in red tapeism to.
I'll just give you an example.
Sure.
Again, on the top of my head, I told you about the first global Buddhist conclave
Yeah.
being held in Srinagar. Imagine the importance and the value of that site. It is protected, but are you using it? How many people know about it?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Why can't you have global events there? Why can't you involve His Holiness the Dalai Lama to come and visit and kind of,
Right.
reinvent that? And so many other things. The Sun temples, as I said, the Mughal gardens.
Right.
A departure from established kind of, an outdated handling of heritage was done when a very famous German composer performed at the Shalimar Bagh in Srinagar, overlooking the Dal Lake.
Right.
But then obviously the narrative around that needs to be built. You need to showcase your heritage, you need to protect it, but most importantly, you need to make it a part of your day-to-day, day-to-day travails, both as a tourist city and as a non-tourist city. So I believe that we should do that in Srinagar. But then again, when Naveen said that then there are wings of the government, there's the tourism department, there is some other department. So the idea is to understand that heritage cannot wait for red tape. Intact does a lot of great work, and I hope the government continues to work with them. And in Srinagar, I'm sure we will work with them starting this year.
Too many owners, but not one owner.
Yeah.
Naveen, would you like to add to this? You've done a good amount of work around Taj Mahal as well. What are some of your experiences? I mean, Taj Mahal, of course, is one of the wonders of the world, very, very well marketed. All of that is there. But there are lots of others which are not so known, right, in the country. What are some of your learnings working on through your travel, the work that you've done on Taj and the others, that something can be done to make them more inclusive in the city fabric and ensure that they become part of us rather than being secluded in a way?
Yes. So, what I'll try to do the next few minutes is to firstly, the heritage that we are talking about is not created by the government. So government is basically it's a governance machine, so to say, and it's supposed to make sure that systems which are put in place work. But history, heritage, culture, these are very intangible. It's very difficult to put them into any system, but we are trying to put them into a system, and therefore there's always a conflict that they don't understand what we are talking about. Heritage professionals say, look, you are not understanding what we are saying. They say development, economics, money, revenue, and the rest of it. We say culture, emotions, sentiments, pride. We are not meeting the. So the cultural attributes are not measurable in the policy making framework of governments. So there's a huge disconnect even in the idea of heritage sitting in a government system. Government can build flyovers, government can build hospitals, government can have master plans because they are all tangible things you see in front of you. But if you were to say, why should you pump in 1,000 crores into the development of heritage of Srinagar, then they say, क्या बात क्या कर रहे हैं, श्रीनगर में है क्या, एक लेक ही तो है वो, बस the dialogue stops there. Otherwise, as you say, you will go to outside Srinagar, see some अरे इसमें क्या है, कुछ स्टेप्स बना के कुछ ऐसे क्या, ये आधा अधूरा.
I'm sorry to kind of add to you. In the thick of Srinagar, you go to downtown Srinagar, the most congested part of Srinagar, and you'll see a little tomb kind of out of the congested concrete jungle. You'll see a tomb rising, unprotected. Yes. So it's even in the middle of Srinagar.
But that idea. So there are a few very good bureaucrats. I'm sure. We have worked with several good people. So it's not that the entire monolith of government is insensitive, but there are some very good bureaucrats. There are very good policy makers. That's why we still have what we have. But the thing is that primarily people like, let's say, KPMG, who are the think tanks, people like, the World Banks and all these financiers who are, they all have. Intech is an NGO. We are the Jola. We have got very little lean structures, so to say. But there are these big conglomerates all over who can directly influence the government and the policy makers and the state governments and the municipalities and the bureaucrats and the IS officers like Mr. Mattu sitting next to me. You see, the synergy has to come from there. That look, there are people who understand. Why don't we involve them? We understand this a little less, let's say, but there are people who understand, so let's involve them. Like you have a master plan, like you have a conservation plan, like you have a national education policy, like you have a national medical policy, whatever. And is there a national heritage policy in India? A big cross. Is there a national, state or city cultural policy? A big cross. But it is the highest flag that we want to raise, the culture of India, millions of years old. Do you have a policy? No, we don't have. The heritage of India, from east to west, the churning point happened here. Do you have any framework for protection of this millions of unprotected heritage? Well, no. But we have a policy to make the longest flyover. We have the policy to, educate people, but we don't have the policy to educate them to take care of the culture. That connection is missing. We have a tourism policy, but we don't connect it with the culture policy or the education policy or the other revenue generating policies. So somewhere, and I look at IAS officers with great hope. I look at institutions like KPMG and the likes of KPMG who are thinking, and the larger conglomerates which are here to have just one day, just devote one day, if not more, one day, best if it is done in Srinagar because that provides you the best environment. Just give one day of 365 days, but get all these people on board and make presentations and solve this problem once and for all. Even if it is a smart city, it is Hriday, it is Prasad, it is the other schemes, just have a national heritage framework or a national cultural framework, whatever you people want to call it. Work out your vertical for economics, work out your vertical for infrastructure, work out your vertical for tourism. let the people say, but how does heritage help me with this? And the heritage professionals will answer that question. Just give the heritage of India one day out of 365 days in Srinagar, and we will have the best, if not good,
Even bigger conclave.
Even-
And
yeah.
Okay. This is too large a topic. Of course, we all realize this heritage to be talked about, and there are very many threads that are attached to it. In this short period of time which was allocated to us, I don't think we will be able to do justice to this. But I think from these all conversations that we had just in the past few minutes, I think the one thing that I take away, and of course the audience would have appreciated as well, is our heritage is something that we are proud of. It's not something that we can let it go or or ignore. That's the starting point of our evolution. No matter if we are designing a new smart city or other urban development programs that we are undertaking, that's where the journey starts. It has to be inclusive in the overall planning. While there are different stakeholders, different organizations looking at different aspects of the cities, but they all have to converge together with a single focus that we make it inclusive, we take care of them, and of course we use this as part of the overall development and sustenance of the city as well, whether we talk about financially or otherwise. So that's an important area, of course. And the other thing, of course, that I take away, while policy level changes is it's a broad brush stroke that we are talking about, but of course, yes, lots needs to be done. A dialogue needs to be initiated so that we are able to focus around the protection of our heritage and how best we can showcase it and take advantage of it as well. Not only while we have inherited it from our parents, it is our duty that we take care of them and we pass it on over to our future generations as well, but all as part of inclusivity and not ignoring them. So, and on that note, I would like to thank Mr. Matu and Mr. Naveen Piplani both for their precious time and some good thoughts. I wish this session was much longer, but yes, we are coming to Srinagar, sir, so let's be ready with that. On that note, thank you very much.
Okay, do we have any questions here?
You mentioned about the heritage. Well, thank you very much for because of the very good heritage in India. I belong to Rajasthan. So many heritage sites are there, but not access to the public domain. Government of India have a eco-tourism policy in the Ministry of Tourism Department, where the three segments: rural tourism, agro-tourism, eco-tourism. Why to explore it? When you explore it in a better way. So the local development is a issue of climate change, issue of energy, and issue of environment. Like in local level, not top level, local level. How to decrease the ecological footprint. So it should be eco-tourism policy be explored at district level. So the district level, district become a good heritage structure and explore the employment generation. Some training institutes to be started. I suggestion an eco-tourism development center. Thank you.
Okay.
Sure, sir. Point noted. I think it all revolves and focuses around this whole fact that it has to be an inclusive development. There are different policies, different things. It all just needs to come together with a single focus, and that's where it will start evolving and become a part of the overall planning process going forward. I think then it will solve the purpose for which we are all there for. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now I would request Mr. Kapoor to please felicitate the speakers with a small memento from Exhibitions India Group. To Mr. Naveen Piplani, Director in TAC. Mr. Junaid Azim Mattu, Mayor Srinagar Municipal Corporation. I would request my colleague Mr. Ishan Badoli from Exhibitions India Group to please hand over the memento to Mr. Sanjeev Kumar Lohia, MD and CEO, Indian Railway Station Development Corporation. Sorry, sir. Mr. Ashutosh Kapoor, Director, Infrastructure, Government and Healthcare, KPMG in India.